we are now going to start into our Welcoming Women to the Industry panel. But first, a word from our gold sponsor, Finance It.
Over 3,000 home improvement contractors in Canada are closing more sales using a buy now, pay later program from Finance It. Our financing allows you to give your customers flexible payment options with open loans, no hidden fees, and transparent payment terms. Start advertising with 0% interest or no payments for up to 12 months to attract more customers and close more deals. Sign up for free today with Finance It.
And now I would like to welcome our moderator, Danielle Gillanders, Senior Project Manager at Graham Infrastructures. Danielle is a passionate advocate for women working in construction and has been in the industry for over 10 years. Danielle sees the benefits that a diverse team brings to delivering projects. Over to you, Danielle.
Thank you very much. My name is Danielle Gillanders, and I am a Senior Project Manager at Graham Construction. I'll be moderating our final panel of the day focused on welcoming women to the industry. Such an important topic. Women are this huge untapped resource for the construction industry. And the questions we're going to discuss today are about what we can all do as leaders in the construction industry to create that path and environment for welcoming women to our industry and drive more women to consider a construction-oriented career path. Just scrolling through the attendees here, and I want to particularly call out our male attendees today, acknowledging that diversity in our workplace is a leadership issue and not just a women's issue, is a key part of the path forward to a more inclusive and diverse environment. My thanks to all our attendees, and I'm thrilled that you're participating in this important conversation. I see it as a two-part initiative. The first part, how do we open more doors for young women to see construction as a viable career path? And then what do we do to keep those doors open throughout career development? Joining me today for discussions are Laura Hutt. Laura is the founder and director of Women in Steel Toes and a superintendent for a large construction management company in Ottawa. SADAF Parvaiz, a global enterprise diversity and inclusion leader who sits on the executive people leadership team at GHD, and Jennifer Green, a director of Young Women's Initiatives and Competitions at Skills Ontario. Thank you all for joining us. Just want to start off with, I'll ask you each to provide a bit of a summary of your history and expertise, and particularly what attracted you to leadership roles that encourage young women to join the construction industry. Laura, if we can start with you.
Hi, everyone. So as she mentioned, I'm an assistant superintendent for a large company here in Ottawa, Ontario. I first got attracted to construction just based off the amount of challenges it provided me and all the cool things I got to see. It's not very often you're walking down the road, you see a construction site. Well, sorry, it is very often you see a construction site. But to see the inside of it and see how everything gets to go together, that's when I really fell in love with construction.
Wonderful, thank you. Jennifer, how about for you?
I originally wasn't going into skilled trades. I was actually going into forensic criminology when I was still a high school student. And this fell in my lap as an opportunity where, even though my entire family is in skilled trades pretty much, it was not really ever talked about, nor was it pushed. And my mother wanted university. And then in school, it was all pushed for university. So when the opportunity arose, it was like, ooh, what is that? I don't know anything about that. Like, let me learn more. Let me go ask questions, right? So the more and more I asked questions, the more I learned about the industry and the opportunities of working with your hands was really a draw because I'm 100% a visual learner, and finding that there was a career opportunity out there that allowed me to do just that and literally work with my hands led me into that role. And my advocacy and my volunteer work is what led me into my leadership role, where I've been able to basically like slam the two of them together and take my advocacy and my background of my skilled trade of millwright and put them to a greater good and be able to try to promote to others and let them know exactly what's out there so they have a chance to find the career that they love as well.
Great, thank you so much. And Sadaf, how about for you?
Yeah, mine is slightly different. I'm actually very new to the construction industry. So obviously my role is inclusion and diversity, and I'm actually an accountant by background. So I started at one of the other professional services firms, the accounting firms, and was there for many years and did a career change about 15 years ago to move into the inclusion and diversity space because even in the accounting profession, especially at the higher levels, we were lacking diversity. And so it was something that was a passion of mine. And I was able to actually pivot out of accounting and into this role around trying to retain and develop. And so your comment about retention is huge. Retaining and developing women in predominantly male-dominated industries has been a passion of mine for many, many years. And I had the opportunity to come into the AEC industry last year as the global leader here. So I am actually a newbie, I'd say, at least in this construction space, but definitely have been around the block when it comes to effective programs and things that help all people succeed in their careers.
Great. Well, I'm so pleased that you're all able to join us today. It's such a great, diverse background and wealth of knowledge between the three of you. So I want to start out today with a focus on the benefit of having more women in our industry. I know from my role working at a construction company, just finding skilled labor is becoming more and more of a challenge for construction companies, and encouraging more women to participate in construction. It's being spoken at all levels throughout my organization, from relatively new superintendents all the way through to executives. But the previous panel really discussed that studies are also showing diversity in the workplace provides significant benefits in terms of profitability and other performance metrics. SADAF, what are some of the benefits of having a more diverse workplace, and how have you seen it changing our working environments?
Yeah, and I think what I would add to that is you need the diversity and the inclusion. So you can have a really diverse workforce, but if everyone's not feeling included and feeling the level of safety and comfort to bring their whole self to work, to actually contribute their ideas, we're going to lose out on all of those statistics you were talking about in terms of all the studies that show having a diverse workforce is better for the bottom line and innovation and all these other things, because people will stifle their ideas if they aren't feeling included. So we need both. We need the diversity and the inclusion. And so for our organization, certainly having those different points of view is so important to be able to look at a problem or a project in new and different ways. And we can't have that if there's very few women, or if those women don't feel empowered to actually speak up. And certainly safety is a huge element of any construction company, and we're no different, and safe. And we just talk about, if you don't have psychological safety, then how can you bring up potential physical safety hazards that are on the site? So, making sure that the environment is inclusive of all voices is actually saving lives, quite frankly. So we really need to make sure that the women and all people on the construction site have that voice to be able to raise those concerns.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, that it's not just about having, more people of all backgrounds, ages, and races involved, but it's also about making sure that they're included and they want to be engaged, and we're giving them those opportunities. Jennifer, I wanted to ask you specifically, from your role leading young women's initiatives at Skills Ontario, are you seeing, is construction being seen as a welcoming environment for young women? What are some of the things that your team is doing that's working well, and what are some things that you've tried that is not working well?
I think when it comes to a welcoming environment is being open about your diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. If they're, for lack of a term, behind the scenes and you only learn about them once you become an employee, then women who are looking to come into the industry don't necessarily know you have them or what your protocols are. But being a little bit more public about the programs that you have, let women know that we've got your back. Here are our programs, and you can see them before you even apply. So you know that you're walking into a company that is progressive in being accountable and proactive in having those types of programs. And as far as a welcoming environment, I'm going to probably say it a lot today. It all comes back down to the basics. We've heard a lot lately about, not lately, but forever, about proper fitting workwear and PPE, and as simple as the same availability of washrooms. Not just one on the ground level, if there's multiple on different floors of a project building, that if there is one for a woman on one level, then there should be one for a woman on every level or any area, that there's also one for a man. And if there are lock codes for them, that the lock code should be appropriate. So a lot of things come right back down to the basics of what makes a woman feel comfortable in a welcoming environment. As far as Skills Ontario, our Young Women's programming is bursting at the seams. So we host 17 regional events co-hosted by our partners and sponsors, normally in person. But over the last couple of years, they've all been done virtually, where it might be based off of a region, but anybody in the province can join. So it's really exciting because maybe some students from the Hamilton area could join the Thunder Bay event if maybe there's a college or a company out there that they want to see. We also host Canada's largest young women's conference, where in person we normally have 2,000 young women on site at the Toronto Congress Centre in conjunction with the Skills Ontario competition. But we've been hosting it virtually, open to all, including, which really excites me, we've heard from a lot of male teachers, both post-secondary and secondary, saying, hey, I have all male class. We understand that this is a women's conference, but you're virtual now. Can we attend? I want these young gentlemen to hear what a woman goes through. Like, there's all these layers of stigmas for skilled trades, but then you slam on top of that another layer for women, and then another layer for every additional underrepresented group. There's all these other additional layers of stigmas. And we brought in over 8,000 people. We also held an entire event in French that brought in over 500, as well as ASL. We also did an International Women's Day conference that was held earlier this week. And we do International Day of the Girl and a Girl Guide badge. We are the very first ever Skilled Trades and Technologies badge for Girl Guides. So we're really pushing the limits as what we can think of outside the box to be able to bring new and exciting ideas to get youth involved or get underrepresented groups involved or second, third career involved, which also leads me to, we did a really fun activity last year. We did a Guinness World Record focusing on women in trades and the history of the Robertson screwdriver being Canadian, trying to be as outside of the box as we can about how do we showcase this as viable and exciting career options.
Great. I think you really gave a great overview there of some of the things that you're doing that's really opening the doors for young women to see construction as something that they want to get into. And Laura, I wanted to ask you, you obviously, your role as director of Women in Steel Toes, but also through your experience as a superintendent, what are some of the things that initially attracted you to work in construction? And what are the key steps that employers are taking or that you think employers could take to attract those young women to work in construction?
For me, a big thing is visibility. Being able to see yourself in the role or be able to see other people in the role who are like you, who look like you, who talk like you, it does wonders for people. Because you're always seeing the same men come out and be in this role. It's hard to really visualize yourself there. Over my career, I've worked with a few different companies, landing on the company that I'm with now. And the biggest difference that's led me to stay and be here is actually the leadership within the company itself and the programs that they put forward. I worked with a very small company previously, and working with them, they hired me as their woman, basically. Which was cool, but and it gave me a lot of experience. But moving on to the company I'm with now, they've employed this huge diversity program. They have great leadership in the roles, which is where I really believe it starts from, is having that leader up top, believe in the diversity and inclusion program, practice the program, practice, the policies that they're putting out there. And it really does show out throughout the rest of the company as well, and being able to show, hey, we've got this great program, we've got these great initiatives, come work for us. And having that flexibility and having that voice that's been given really helps women want to stay in the industry.
Great. And I do just want to remind our participants, you're welcome to provide any questions that you have for the team here through the Q&A panel. But a question I wanted to ask for everyone is, to any woman who's considering diving into construction but's maybe holding back, fear of being not accepted or maybe not acceptable, what would you say to those women? Jennifer, let's start with you.
My number one piece of advice that I always tend to give is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Go find somebody in the field and ask. Whether you like the answer or you don't, or you now think it's for you or you don't think it's for you, at least you learned about it. At least you went out and you had that option. I mean, in Ontario alone, we have 144 registered trades, and a very large chunk of that number is in construction. Does anybody know that there's like 6 different types of crane operators? the majority of the public do not know that. So until you ask the questions and you learn what's actually out there, how do you make the best decision for you? So my advice is, if you're interested in a field or you don't know if you're interested in the field, go talk to, if you're in school, a guidance counselor. If you're in post-secondary, go to admissions and ask them. If you're in industry, a lot of these groups have support groups or companies that have an info email. Shoot a question. You never know what connection you're going to make. Maybe you're going to network now. Maybe you've opened up your door. Maybe they know who you are. You never know where a question is going to lead you, and it's just as essential as networking.
I think you touched on such an important point there with asking questions and creating that network of people who's going to support you throughout your career and to, you know, help you get in and open doors. Is there something specific that you would say to the people on the call who are maybe in those leadership positions or, you know, even just working in construction in terms of how they could reach out and engage with people who are maybe a little, you know, that are outside the industry at the moment, but looking to get in?
I would say make sure that you are available or find a way to be known as available. Me personally, I'm very open. I say it might take me a while to respond sometimes, but like, here's my card, here's my email, here's this. I just met with a gentleman the other day, a sheet metal worker who wants to go more into advocating. He wants to go more into leadership. And I managed to schedule a call with him. Like, he ended up meeting with my boss and he heard just about us on our social media posts. And all it took was a reach out on social media. And we were able to answer right away. And I scheduled a call with him and I chatted with him for an hour on my drive home. And we went over so many different topics. And it was really lifting because of the amount of different things that we talked about. And he's like, oh man, he's like, I never would have thought of that before. He's like, that's not something that I ever considered. So being able to make yourself as available as possible, even though you're busy, find a way, even if it's like, hey, I'm available every week, Friday, 3 to 4. If you be open like that to your employees, or if you're feeling comfortable enough for yourself to network to allow, for lack of a term, strangers or the public to be able to reach out to you, answer just as much as you can. You never know what a difference in someone's life you're going to make. And I can definitely tell you that from personal experience.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful advice. Sadaf, what about for you? And just to repeat the question, for women considering, you know, jumping into construction, but maybe are being held back, what advice would you give them?
I think there's a couple of things. I always like the analogy of having your own personal board of directors. So people who know you too, right? So it's really important for people who know what your skills are, what your qualifications are, what you're excited about, what your, quite frankly, your family situation is also like, and how that plays into. So people who are outside of the industry are also helpful because they can kind of mirror back to you, you know, you can do this, or this is what your strength is. And even if it's an industry you don't have direct skills in, you have all these other skills that are transferable, for example. So having a personal board of directors is really, really great. And then to Jennifer's point, though, having someone on the inside also to really ask questions around, well, what would it take? Do I need to reskill? How long would that course or certification take? You know, all those kinds of very nitty-gritty questions that you need to break into the industry. So I like having someone who's maybe not in the industry to just think about, is this a good decision for you and why? And then also have someone within the industry that you can really, because knowledge is power, right? So really getting your questions answered is really important. And finding someone who's in the industry like Jennifer or Laura would be a great place to start.
Wonderful. And Laura, over to you.
Basic advice, but just go for it. There's so many programs out there now that actually allow you to even go in and try a trade. You know, 5-week programs that run through 5 different trades where you get to go in and physically, you know, see what it's like to do some welding or see what it's like to do some carpentry. Finding those resources that are available, and, you know, once you've hit that point, to even calling companies to see, you know, what is it like a day in a life of this? What does it take? And then using resources like Skills Ontario to figure out how to get there.
Laura, what would you advise for people who are looking for where they can find information on those kinds of resources? What are some good resources, I guess, actually to the whole panel that are available for women looking for that?
So there's a lot of government funded programs out there as well right now. One is like Empower Trades, that one's out of Edmonton. That's the 5-week program I discussed. And there's a few other resources as well that do help you get there. I think Jennifer might have a better idea.
Yeah, I mean, of course, my first answer is Skills Ontario. We have a multitude of programming for different ages and grades, including multiple other underrepresented groups such as newcomers, Black youth, women in trades, and multiple other pieces of programming. Empower is a great one, Laura. I love that group. But within Ontario alone, recently there's been what's been called SDF funding, and there's many other groups offering a multitude of other options. A lot of it is for youth, but Soy is offering boot camps, and there is Tomorrow Trades, as well as many other groups that are offering programming. And then you've got all the support groups. So when I started 20 years ago, there weren't any. There was no mentor for me. There was no see it, be it. There was no woman who looked like me. And at what point, just after the recession, I was the only woman international left in my organization. So the fact that today there's at least 30 groups that I could rhyme off the top of my head of, again, where you could ask questions, that they have programming or that they have partners that they do with programming. It's a really great place to look at as well. And like some examples are Kick-Ass Careers, Laura Hutz-Wist, looking at women of power line technicians, women in renewable energy, women in HVAC, Women's Federation of Trucking Canada, and the list goes on and on, where you can also reach out to for programming and mentorship and just questions.
Great. Thank you. Sadaf, I was speaking with a young lady today, very smart, capable, with a fascinating and diverse experience in education. But she didn't come from a traditional background that would lead her to a career in construction, but it was something she was interested in. And I think your background working in accounting is somewhat similar. Knowing that women are less likely to pursue training in trades or engineering, do employers need to do more to broaden our recruiting energy to create the opportunity for people of more diverse backgrounds and levels of experience to get engaged in the construction industry?
The short answer to your question is yes. Employers should be doing a lot more, and certainly in this great resignation era, like you said, just even getting roles filled is becoming quite a challenge. And I think if you want that diversity, you need to be appealing. I think someone said it earlier, is talk about what you are doing to create a supportive environment, whether it's through benefits and policies. But I'll just give a really, really specific example. Even the way that you put your job description together. So our organization actually uses AI software called Textio to make the job posting gender neutral, because even the words that you use in how you describe a particular role can be more or less appealing to a particular to women, for example, or people from underrepresented groups. And so this AI technology helps to sort of de-bias the job description so that when someone reads it on LinkedIn or wherever you're going to recruit, it doesn't come across as something that is only for men, for example, or has words that are more appealing to male applicants. So there's very specific things you can do to just be more mindful about your entire recruitment process right from the job description. Obviously, then through the interview questions, the people you put on those interview panels, certainly Laura talking about that visibility and having women on those interview panels would be very important to show that you are open to having more women in your workforce. So those are some specific examples, and certainly even just on your website, like having descriptions of the types of mentoring and sponsorship programs you have to show that you're there to relaunch people's careers or retool and give them the skills and experiences they need to be successful.
Great. I think that's some great advice. And I guess too, for women who are looking at job postings and are seeing those words, as someone who does some hiring myself for a construction company, don't be afraid to throw yourself into the ring for those jobs. Just because you don't have perfect experience, we're always keen to see different types of backgrounds and experience. Laura, I wanted to ask you, I was speaking with a young coworker of mine, a male. He started his career as a co-op student. He was feeling a little nervous the first time he came onto a job site. And he wanted to acknowledge too that maybe this is a little bit heightened for a female in a similar position. Was there anything that intimidated you at first coming onto a job site? And anything that you did to make yourself feel more comfortable, or anything that you would recommend to your employer or to coworkers about how you can make women more comfortable on a job site?
I think coming onto a job site, like you mentioned, is intimidating for everyone for the first time. There's a lot going on, stuff you probably, if you've never been around construction, you've never seen before. So it's really an eye-opening experience to decide this, this massive equipment or this building that's being constructed, a massive hole in the ground, whatever it may be. One of the things that helped make me a lot more comfortable is just asking a lot of questions. I've been very fortunate too to have great leaders above me and great people who set really respectful examples of how to lead a crew. My first boss was amazing. He was out there, he'd speak to everybody the exact same. So having that leadership where, he's speaking to me the exact same way he'd speak to a guy in the crew, and the same way that he'd speak to management above him or around him, really helps set that example of, this is a good place to be.
How have you, I think, for most women, especially working in construction, it is a male dominated industry. Mm-hmm. How have you gone about finding kind of male advocates for you in your career? How do you identify them, and then what do you do to keep them engaged with you as you progress?
Luckily, I find there's a lot of good male advocates out there that'll help you if you're willing to ask the question, if you're willing to put in the work and get out there, that they're right there beside you, helping you along, asking the questions and just being interested to learn about everything that's going on around you will help you easily find those people who are willing to help you grow and succeed. So put yourself out there and don't be afraid to ask all the questions.
That's great advice. A question for everyone here, or sorry, for Jennifer, about getting out in front of advertising construction-oriented careers early in the education process. We're all kind of we go through our high school, we go through university. What are some things that we should all be doing to engage more actively with women when they're at that early stage in their education and career?
Making sure that they have a support network. So someone in the chat just asked where, the list of the support groups I just talked about. And I noted on the Skills Ontario website, we have what's called the Women in Trades Resource Hub. So whenever we find a group, we add them to our documents. So it's all listed in one place. So it tries to be like a one-stop shop. So on here, we also have scholarships, bursaries, and grants. Like whenever we hear of a group offering that, we put it in there. Camps, classes, and e-learning we hear for women, resources and publications and research. So being able to find a support network, such as just knowing where to find the information, knowing who to ask, where to go, is a really beneficial piece in being able to help them feel comfortable and making sure that, did they know who they are? Do they know where they want to go? And if they aren't sure yet, they're going to have a little bit of a hard time speaking up for themselves. If they're not 100% sure, they might need support and making sure that they at least have that support behind them of helping them figure out who they are, where they want to go, so that they can have a voice to also stand up for themselves if something happens, so that they feel comfortable in their own shell. That's something that I hear from multiple young women that I mentor is they don't know how to stand up for themselves yet, or they don't even feel comfortable enough yet in their own skin, as far as the saying of thick skin, to be able to stand up for themselves. So also helping making sure that they know how to navigate their way through tough or sticky situations. And that's for any career, no matter what, even as simply as just constantly being interrupted. What is the most professional and practical way to get around that and to get your point across of stop interrupting me, right? So even just really, again, going back down to the basics. How do you get through just an everyday, single day life? What's going to happen to you on a daily basis? There's going to be little, but as it starts to compound, how do you support them to get through that?
I think you addressed it for the most part, but I see a question here in the chat about what are organizations like Skills Ontario doing to increase awareness of trades and training and the trade certification career path specifically for young girls at the elementary school level. Is there some more information you can provide specific to that sort of younger group?
Yeah, for sure. So we do in-school presentations across the province. We normally hit around 125,000 students annually. And that was a big number for our in-person. Virtually, we're able to get to even more students, and we have catered presentations for specifically elementary students as well as secondary students. We even have parent nights. So one thing that I didn't mention earlier as far as our programming is that we have a new 6-part series for parents as well. So the first event is, what are the trades? What are the pathways? How do you get into it? And then the next 5 events, one is dedicated to construction, one's dedicated to industrial, one's dedicated to service, and so on and so forth. And as far as elementary, I am very excited. It's going to be launching hopefully in the next school year. We created an alphabet book. So pre-K, kindergarten, grade 1 and 2, going a little bit younger than as far as maybe the elementary that's being asked here, but what's in curriculum. So also making sure that programming is tied to curriculum so teachers can more easily incorporate it for an entire class. So launching will be a skilled trades and technology alphabet book, completely in English, and another version completely in French. So we have a lot of different programming at the elementary levels as well. And going back to our International Day of the Girl, it's a 3-part series. So there's workshops that kids can sign up for with their families. There's also a mini challenge series. So welding, for example, our challenge for elementary students is a popsicle stick playground. And the welding is glue or hot glue, and the metal is popsicle sticks. So we relate metal back to crafts. And then the other piece is a For Girls by Girls conference. So this conference is for ages 5 to 11. And we have a keynote speaker, a tradeswoman. She speaks, but then the students are actually the ones who interview her. They get to ask all the questions based on what they heard of her story. And as a panel like this, instead of it being tradeswomen, it's a tradeswoman interviewing the little girls. So what do you know about skilled trades? What do you think you want to go into? What's your favorite tool? And we also have a tool show and tell with that. So again, really thinking about, as an age 5 to 11 kid, you're more likely to want to watch kids than adults. So making sure that our conferences reflect that as well.
Oh, great. I think, we had some great discussion there on how we can get more women to join the industry. I want to turn our attention a little bit towards keeping women in the industry. And one of the things that I think, we're all professional women, we all work at organizations of various sizes. And one of the questions that's come through is, what are your thoughts on women-focused events in your organization? Whether it's specialty committees or boards, ladies' night social events, those kinds of conferences. Is it better to have that sort of separation, or is it better to keep everyone together and have the conversation, as a diverse group of women and men? Let's start with Laura.
I think they're great. I think men get their own social events when they go out, and they're not as formal. So like going out and playing golf after work, women do that too, or anything like that, but keeping them open so men can come and join, or everybody can come and join the event, even if it is labeled, women's night and they're going out and doing things. There's no reason that a man can't join along.
SADAF, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, so this is the classic sort of, oftentimes people who push back against inclusion and diversity programs say, well, isn't this just creating more separation or more segregation and things like that? So I think the important piece is you have to have a balance. So if you have employee networks in your organization, or if you have events that are sort of catering to create community, that's really important, especially for those underrepresented groups, because maybe they're in an office where they literally are the only woman or the only, a person of color. So when you have events that span across your organization, they're able to see someone that might not be in their particular office, but know that someone like them does exist in leadership or in other parts of the organization. So there's this community element of being with people that you have familiarity with and gaining strength from that and creating community. But by the same token, and I think someone said in the chat, and Jennifer alluded to this as well, that the men need to be part of that conversation too. So having those individuals, even just to listen and learn and understand create that empathy of what it feels like to be in another person's shoes, can only happen when they're also at the table. And so you just have to have that balance of having events that are open to everyone, and also at times there is a need to have sort of more candid conversations. If I think about even people from neurodiverse backgrounds, you know, in our organization, they wanted to have meetings that were just specifically for people who have neurodiversity, because they were being really transparent, open, and honest. And maybe a lot of them weren't out yet in their organization on the particular aspect of their identity. So you do have to create safe spaces so that, you know, issues and challenges can be uncovered, but then also without having everyone at the table, will never overcome those issues, because part of that problem is maybe people don't realize they are part of the problem, that they need to really become more aware of it.
And Jennifer, what are your thoughts on that one?
Thinking about youth, generally you don't see a young girl go to the bathroom on her own. You see her go with her group of friends because they're more comfortable. They don't want to be seen walking alone into the bathroom. Now take that for events for women in trades programming for youth. They don't necessarily feel comfortable enough, if they've never done it before, to do it beside their male counterparts in high school who, for example, maybe grew up on a farm and welded with his dad. We really find in our events that we get a lot more participation out of young women if it is only young women at the event, because they feel more comfortable as peers beside them. And again, thinking about stereotypes that have been put against women in non-traditional roles. And I mean, as far as workplace events, I think, again, thinking about the comfort level, if you have a monthly roundtable with all the women, they're going to start to feel more comfortable and be able to be more open. And as you get more into either the leadership role or more experience, or you've done it more and more, the more comfortable that you will feel to now go be, for lack of a term, mingled and have that conversation with male counterparts, because you now feel like, okay, I've got this, like I can go talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that makes a ton of sense. I see a question coming in about how important role models are of any gender to encouraging women into the industry, and specifically, I think regarding, you know, women who are more progressed in their career, who are maybe, you know, considering construction as a second career path. What role do those role models have in promoting women? Let's start with Jennifer.
They play everything. They are every role. I have had probably more male mentors in my career when I started at 16 and to the age I am now. And they've helped me at very big and minimal pieces throughout my career. And I find, even though the older that I get, I still need a mentor, whether it's a male or a woman. You need a mentor at all places, especially if you're venturing into something new, or if I think you said the question was noted as an older woman, or possibly going into a second career as an older woman. You're starting out perhaps just as green as, like, for example, the tools piece of it, not on your life experience. So some of the mentorship roles are switched a little bit, but being able to have somebody that you can just be like, hey, I don't want to look stupid. Am I doing this right? Or is this how it's supposed to be? Even just being able to ask those really simple questions to help get you through the day. And as far as mentorship goes, I had a male mentor in my second year of apprenticeship. And if it hadn't been for him, I probably might have quit. I was having a really tough year. I didn't think I could do it. And he stepped up and took me under his wing. And he recognized and saw the struggle I was going through. So there are a lot of male supporters out there, and when you see it, grab hold and make sure you ask your questions.
Laura, do you want to provide an answer to that question as well?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off what Jennifer said as well, the importance of having a mentor and a role model is sometimes when you're going into these careers or making these changes in your life, you don't know what you don't know. So having that mentor, that person that you've built that relationship with, can really help answer those questions that you had no idea you even had.
Great. On the topic of women who are maybe a little bit more mature, sort of women often have that balancing point between family and work. It's something that kind of hits them harder than it hits men. I think especially in construction, where hours are long and, you know, you got to be at work early and you expected to stay there late. What are some of the things that employers can do to ease this burden?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And then the pandemic, we saw, you know, disproportionate amount of women leaving the workforce completely. We went back to almost 1980s level of workforce labor participation of women. So it certainly did not help matters in terms of all sectors being impacted by the pandemic. But as an employer, it's really important to think about your benefits and policies. One specific example is having gender neutral policies. So actually, a lot of times in these industries, people say, oh, there's no maternity leave or there's no, but I would argue go one step beyond that and have a parental leave policy that's for all genders. And the reason I say that is the workload at home. Typically, studies have shown, and especially during the pandemic again, is that double burden, right? The double bind that women have, where the workload at home doesn't dissipate, and then it's in addition to the work outside of the home. And so when you have gender neutral policies that encourage partners or men to take parental leave, it actually helps women's labor participation because it allows them the flexibility to perhaps come back sooner or make decisions that are benefit their career or just make the right choice for their families. But also, quite frankly, even when men take only a few weeks off of parental leave, studies have shown that then that continues in the relationship going forward. So helping out at home starts to become more normalized, and it continues when both parents go back to work. So there is a lot of studies to support when you have gender neutral policies that support families and flexibility. And quite frankly, the new generation, a lot of men that I speak to want to take time off. They want to bond with their children. This is something that I think is a great push from the sort of millennial generation to say, this is no longer okay for me to just go back to work when this life-altering event happens in one's life. So by doing that, we all benefit. And so looking at a lot of your policies from multiple angles is really important, I think. So, and then of course, a lot of what Jennifer talked about is just the physical accommodations at work sites is obviously hugely important. And so thinking through how you can accommodate your employees to be able to still have that flexibility and have a meaningful life outside of work is important.
Sadaf, can you be a little bit more specific, I think, with the last point you made there about what are some of the things that employers can do to facilitate that?
So beyond having policies,
yeah, specifically on a work site.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should talk about the PPE. So we do have properly fitting PPE. Obviously, that's really important. I would say even going one step beyond and thinking through for how we accommodate sort of women who are nursing perhaps, and how we can figure out privacy and an area for them to perhaps if they need to pump and where to store that and things like that. I know at a previous organization, we even had couriers to pick up, breast milk and be able to take that to a place where they can and take it back home. So there's lots of really specific things that can be done. It just sort of depends on the nature of the work and what the construction site sort of looks like and how you can support. But I think the biggest thing is being open to the ask, right? Showing that you're open to what that employee needs in that particular situation, and then finding creative ways to support.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just expand too, is just to say, encouraging people to have the conversation with women. I think sometimes I've experienced men are hesitant to have that conversation with us because they don't want to be seen as pointing out that we're a woman or something of that nature. Where most of the time, I've never felt like, oh, I've been discriminated against because somebody's asked me what it's like to be a woman working in a male-dominated industry. So I think that's just.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think don't assume. So a lot of times once someone becomes a parent, there's all these assumptions that are made about, oh, they probably don't want to work on that project now, or, so always ask the question first, because you can never assume. Maybe they have really great support system and childcare at home that, yes, they can show up at this particular project at this time of the day. Or so don't make assumptions until you ask. Just have that conversation and really, to your point, I don't think anyone would want decisions made about them without them being involved. So always keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Laura, I wanted to ask, What are some of the biggest hurdles you faced working in construction? And what are some of the myths that you run up into working in, this male-dominated industry about what women sort of need in order to be successful in construction? What can we do to dispel those myths?
So starting with some of my biggest hurdles, it's definitely been just learning again to ask the questions and to figure everything out. Coming into construction, when I first got there, I was like, oh, like I have to do my best. I have to prove myself. I can't let people think that I'm dumb and I don't know what I'm doing. But being, on a construction site for the first time, you really have no idea what you're doing. You're out there to learn and you're out there to figure it out. So learning that knowledge just doesn't come from school, but a great portion of your knowledge out there comes from experience and getting out and seeing things for the first time. So one of my biggest hurdles is actually stepping back to ask all the questions and to realize that I will always be continuously learning throughout my career. Some of the myths that I've had are just, you get to the site for the first time and sometimes it's hard to create that relationship with your coworkers because you're not going to have the same things in common all the time. So finding common ground, sometimes there's this myth that they don't want to say something or they don't want to say the wrong thing in front of you. They're afraid that, there's going to be sexual harassment claims or harassment claims against them. That's, it's not true. We're people too. We make, there's comments that we make too that might come off guard to you. So it's, learning to use your voice and set those boundaries, and just learning how to talk it through with people and finding that common ground in order to build those relationships. Most people are pretty respectful, and on sites people get talking or they're used to talking a certain way, and then you come around and they're not sure what's going to be appropriate in front of you. So making sure that you're just setting that conversation as well.
Great. There's a question that's come in here about how can we support women who are coming back to the workforce after a maternity leave. Maybe Sadaf, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, so having really good on-ramping and off-ramping programs is vital. So having a career reintegration program, having a buddy system. So we have a program like where women who've been through what you've been through, or anyone has gone through that, to share that experience and connecting with them on, okay, what is your plan? What is your childcare plan? What does your home sort of routine look like? And really being realistic about what they can take on when they do come back, because obviously your life is very different than it was before. And so really having those mentoring, it's more coaching, I would say, conversations around, well, this is what worked well for me. I came back 4 days a week, because you always know that the kid gets sick at daycare the first week and then you got to take the next week off anyway. So like being realistic about what you need to do in that first few months back, and being proactive. So we also have to sort of prep the manager, so the supervisor of the employee that's coming back, to say, it's not how it was before they left, and these are the types of things that you're going to need to also be prepared to support with and be flexible on, and coaching them and equipping them with the right messaging and tools, and also so the supervisor knows what are the HR policies, what can we offer, and in terms of support. So educating both sides is really important, and I've seen that buddy system work really well in terms of on-ramping when someone's been through very similar experiences but is slightly ahead in their career or journey, so that they can say, don't worry, this is normal, this does happen, what you're feeling is totally what I've been through, and things like that, to just, because it is quite overwhelming coming back, and also just understanding what the boundaries are in terms of how much they want to share about their life and their experience. So really just having that buddy system is important, or coaching mechanism or program.
Great. And I want to build on what you've provided there, and ask Jennifer, do you think that our organizations are doing enough to support women to stay in the workforce, whether it's coming back from maternity leave or something else? Are we doing enough? And maybe what more could we be doing?
My immediate answer is no. I have two children. They turn 8 and 10, and my first mat leave, there was no light duty program. So my manager walked into HR and says, I have a pregnant millwright. What do I do? He's like, that's not a sentence I ever thought I'd be saying, right? So making sure that programs are in place before you even have a woman come on board or before she even gets pregnant, so that you're not scrambling at the last minute and then they're the ones left suffering and having to help you create the program with their doctor. You should already have these in place. So making sure that the support system is there for light duty as you get to the end of your maternity leave. And it was mentioned already about appropriate pumping rooms. I'm part of several women in trades chat groups, and if I read it once more, it's just the amount of women pumping in the back of their vehicles on construction sites because there is nothing available, and they're told by their supervisors, well, you can go use the porta potty. Well, no, like that can't be done there. So, and even if you are going to have an appropriate space for pumping, are you able to at least provide like a mini bar fridge so that it can be put in there? That's a really key piece where I've worked and consulted with several different companies where they're like, oh, we put it in this room and here's a chair. I'm like, great, where's the milk gonna go? So even just thinking that one little extra step, and Sadaf, I'm so happy that you talked about like the buddy system. Coming back to work after my mat leave was awful. Like it basically was like you'd been let go for a year, you weren't working at all, you're completely out of touch with the world other than mom groups and going to the park and grabbing groceries. And it's a big struggle to go back and find yourself all over again because you had to be this completely different person. And then you throw in daycare, as we all noted earlier, but daycare and the hours, they don't match. And if you live in a rural area, there's another different level put on there, because if you're in a rural area, it's all at home daycares and they definitely don't open earlier than 7, and construction is definitely before 7 and definitely after 5. So those are some really big key factors in making sure that something is in place. Oh, I remember what the last one is. My husband's last company was industrial, it was a factory, but their benefit program included pumps, $300 towards breastfeeding pumps, which is to a young family or having children. Anyone who's had children knows how expensive they are and all the equipment that comes with them. It was by far one of the most fantastic benefit programs I have ever seen. And the fact that they took that into consideration blew my mind. I would love to see more companies be able to take that included in their benefits package of money towards breastfeeding pumps.
Yeah, I think that you provided some really good insight there. And one thing I want to expand on just a little bit, I don't have children myself, but a lot of my friends and coworkers have had children. And I think the point about daycare is not being open. You got to be at the job site at 7 o'clock normally. So even, for companies that are, trying to do more to get women to come back to the workforce after they've had children, even having a list of daycares that are willing to open early, just provides, there's a lot going on in that moment when you're coming back to work, just giving us a little bit more support and resources in terms of, who are some of the people that will help us through this transition. So I think that's a really important point as well.
You make I love that idea. I'm jumping in on that one real quick. If you have a site or a building, if they've already done the research as to what are the local within like a half an hour drive, 20-minute drive around that site of, hey, we've done the research, here's your local daycares, that's huge. I mean, when I was working continental shift, I lived in this city or village. I had to drop my kid off at this city and work in this city because there was nothing in between, and the ones where I lived weren't open before 7. So being able to help with that research, especially if you work in a different city than where you live, it's all completely unknown. So if your company is local to that area, if they can help you with that research, that's a huge burden. I love that idea. Absolutely love it.
And I have one more question on this topic before we wrap up here. Laura, is there anything, from being a young woman working in construction, is there anything that you would say to your employer or employers in general about the questions about, the way you might feel about, do I want to start a family, or those kinds of conversations, and sort of what companies are doing to make that conversation or decision-making process easier, or things that are happening that maybe make it more challenging? Is there anything you'd share on that?
I think personally for me, the entire process is still a little scary. I have not had kids yet, but it's hopefully in the future. And thinking about just what Jennifer said and what Sadaf mentioned, daycare, like where do you find that? And having that list would be so resourceful. Or even just having like a back to work introduction program where, you know, you might go back and just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is how I do my job again, and getting back together. And I think there's still a stigma where there's kind of, oh, if I go on maternity leave, like, am I going to lose all the hard work I put in beforehand? So maybe showing that adaptation, okay, here's your maternity leave. This is what it looks like after, and this is how we pick back up where you were. Would be very helpful and comforting in my opinion.
I think that's a great point. And one of the things that I've seen too, in terms of keeping women in the workforce, which is such an important part, I think, of improving kind of diversity and inclusion, is, you know, just having that opportunity to have the conversation with your employer and to not, you know, I think it's Sheryl Sandberg saying, don't leave before you leave, is the thing that's ringing in my head, just around, you know, having the conversations about career development. And are we giving women opportunities to pursue opportunities, even if they maybe are thinking about getting pregnant or pregnant themselves? When were the last times you've seen, you know, somebody who's pregnant get promoted or get offered that new job opportunity? So I see that as such an important part of this conversation. We're just about out of time here, but I wanted to just give everyone the opportunity. If there's anything else you want to add or say, I want everyone to have the opportunity to say that. And I will say for myself, we've had a few comments and questions come in too, just about being able to reach out to people. So I'll start off for myself. Anybody who's interested in getting in touch with me, please feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn. I loved having conversations with all genders, all ages, all races about what we can be doing more to include more diversity and inclusion in our workplaces, and specifically in construction. So please feel free to reach out to me if you're interested, and I'll turn it over to Sadaf. Anything that you would say to close out the conversation today?
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity. I've learned so much from my co-panelists and you, Danielle. I think there was a question in there. Someone was trying to start up an inclusion and diversity program in their organization. So please feel free to reach out to me if someone needs help building business case or trying to figure out how do you have that conversation with senior leadership or with your board or executive management. Happy to lend a hand in that space.
Great, thank you so much. Jennifer, anything you'd say to close out today?
Same thing, I entered it in the chat. You can find all of our programs at skillsontario.com. And if you want to reach out about any of the programs, under the About tab or the Home tab, there is a listing of all the different staff members, or you can email at info@skillsontario.com. We partner and alongside with our sponsors, hundreds of them, to put on these programs. Anything from summer camps, like I said, young women's, to the big competition, to conferences, to in-school presentations, you name it. So if anybody's looking to partner or sponsor us, we are a not-for-profit, feel free to reach out, as we do events with multiple different companies, organizations, and educational institutions. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. And Laura?
I can be found at womeninsteeltoes.com. We provide support in making connections in the community of construction. So any women out there who are looking or thinking about getting started in the industry, or just looking to connect with someone else in their field, feel free to reach out and we can help make that connection.
Great. Well, I certainly very much enjoyed our conversation, and I learned a lot from each of you. So thank you all. That's all the time we have for the conversation today. Back to Danielle to close out the event.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. And thank you to our panelists. Thank you for being so open to sharing your contact information so we can carry on these conversations. I think that's really important. And so with that, we've come to the end of 2022 Women in Construction Virtual Summit. Thank you to all of our speakers and panelists for taking your time out of your day to share your wisdom and experience with us. Thank you to everyone who attended today's event. We hope you enjoyed it and that you're able to take some of this information with you into the future and help your companies going forward. Once again, thank you to our sponsors. This event and events like this wouldn't be possible without you. So I want to give a final shout out to our platinum sponsor, John Deere, our gold sponsors, Aztec Industries and Finance It, our silver sponsors, BKT Tires and Graham Construction, and our bronze sponsors, Cooper Equipment Rentals and Electricity Human Resources Canada. And on behalf of everyone at Annex Business Media's construction group, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next year.